Well, hey, welcome back, everybody. This video is called the top 5 reasons the Indian economy is going to be bigger than China's. And this is going to kind of fit into the Kings of the East. This will actually be in the Kings of the East. And you know, I've so far I've talked about the kingdom, the royal diadem in the documentary. This documentary, maybe depending on how you see this, and we talked about the influence of India and how it's having a cultural influence in the world. And I think there are a couple other things that we need to talk about. We need to talk about the Indian military. We need to talk about the Indian wise men, you know, because every king has a council of wise men. Every great king, has a powerful army. And every great king is prosperous. And I mean, India, you know, think of you all collectively as a king. And this video just isn't, you're going to be bigger than China. This video, I think, is broader in scope. You're going to be the largest economy in the world, I think. So let's go ahead and take a look at this video. And thanks for watching with me.
Top 5 reasons why the economy of India will beat China. Within 20 years from now, there will be 3 superpowers in this world: the USA, China, and India. All 3 of them very different, having their own qualities and strengths. In general, people believe that in 20 years' time, either China or the USA will be the largest economy in the world by far. Most people think it will be China, and only at a very big distance there will be the number 3 being India. But I think there is reason to believe that the economy of India is capable of beating the Chinese economy. If not in 20 years, it might happen in 30 years' time. I've made several videos about this topic, leading to many questions of viewers. Many viewers asked me to explain why I think the Indian economy is capable of becoming bigger than China. Most people do recognize that the Indian economy is growing faster than the Chinese, but they don't think that India can bridge the gap and become larger than China. I think India can, and I will explain why. So here it is. I'll give you my top 5 of reasons why I think that India will eventually beat China and become the largest economy in the world. Reason number 1, the free market. Yes, China has opened up its huge economy to foreign investors decades ago, and it helped to boost the growth of the Chinese economy. But the Chinese economy still has many restrictions that prevent companies from many other countries to do business in China the way they would like to. The attitude that the Chinese government has towards freedom of speech, the freedom to upload and watch online videos, or even the freedom to send and receive messages over the internet, makes it basically impossible for companies like YouTube, Facebook, Google, Amazon, WhatsApp and Netflix to operate in China. These are the largest and the most valuable and fastest growing online companies in the world. They are worth hundreds of billions of dollars each, yet the Chinese government doesn't allow them to freely do business in China. China has the right to do so, and of course there are many good reasons to maintain these restrictions in order to ensure unity and order in such a big country. And of course, China has an impressive track record of creating both social stability and economic growth in the long term. Yet, imagine the business opportunities, the investments and the employment that China misses out on because of these restrictions imposed on companies like YouTube, Facebook, Google, Amazon, WhatsApp and Netflix. The result of these restrictions is that many international online companies now decide to skip China and lay their eye on the next big thing in the global economy, India. India doesn't have the annoying restrictions that many Western companies have to face in China. India is open for business and will gladly accept billion-dollar investments from companies like Facebook. It will help India to boost its economy even more and close the gap with China. Reason number 2, an economy designed for the future. For the past decades, China has made a global career out of manufacturing consumer goods. Look around you and realize how many of the products you see are made in China. Half of the consumer goods in about every house in the Western world are made in China. It's an amazing accomplishment of the Chinese workforce. However, making smartphones and laptops might seem like high-tech industry of the highest level, but in many cases it's not. What is going on in China is the assembling of smartphones and laptops. Much of the design and product development takes place in other countries. When making electronics, the highest return is made in the creativity and design part and selling brand licenses. The large-scale manufacturing itself is not the most profitable activity. Only if you do it on a large enough scale like China does, it creates a significant cash flow. And when that cash flow is originated in being the cheapest at doing basic manufacturing, that cash flow is rather vulnerable to the interference of other cheap workforces like Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Philippines and Vietnam. Mind you, in 20 years' time, these combined countries will have a population of over 1 billion and growing, and they will compete for being the center of global manufacturing of consumer goods. It's going to be a tough ride for China to sustain its position as the world's leader in manufacturing. India, on the other hand, has chosen to play a different game. Although India has a huge manufacturing industry, its focus is much more on industries that are harder to compete with. A very strong example of that is the domestic movie industry known as Bollywood. Bollywood creates entertainment custom made for its own domestic market of over 1 billion people. In that market, there is basically no foreign competition. Bollywood makes billions of dollars each year and is growing each and every year. Another great example of the economic choices that are made in India is a strong focus on software development. India understands that this is how companies like Microsoft and Oracle have established worldwide commercial power. India is working very hard to make Mumbai the software development center of the world, thus creating the new Silicon Valley. Another example of India directing their focus on high-quality services is their booming tourist industry. Each year, brand new luxury resorts open their doors. Each year, more tourists enjoy the Indian hospitality. Yes, when it comes to tourism, China is still much bigger than India, but the number of foreign tourists in China is growing at about 4% per year. India shows a 10% growth. Based upon that growth rate, India could very well be the #1 tourist destination in the world in 20 years' time. Reason number 3, education. Many people still think most of the Indian population is underdeveloped and uneducated. That is not the case. Of course, there are still millions of Indian people who haven't had the opportunity to get proper education. But India's higher education system is the 3rd largest in the world and growing. The Indira Gandhi National Open University is the largest university in the world with over 3.5 million students around the globe. What makes the Indian higher education system even more competitive towards the USA and China is that Indian universities have a very strong focus on science and technology, the exact focus India needs to prepare itself for global economic leadership. The Indian population gets better educated each year, making the Indian workforce more capable of creating high-quality services and products. China too has a huge higher education system, but the Chinese economy has been built on manufacturing, which mostly requires low-level education. And because of the aging population, less people will get higher education in China in the future. While in India, the higher education system is likely to grow even bigger. Reason number 4. The fastest growing large economy in the world. China's economy will gradually slow down in the years to come because it's matured. It experienced a 40-year-long period of high economic growth, and that growth will not continue forever. According to the IMF, China had a 6.9 growth rate in 2017. Very well done. It made China the number 10 on the list of the fastest growing economies in the world. But India was on the number 3 spot with a growth rate of 8.5%. So slowly but surely, India is closing the gap with China. Nonetheless, most people think India will never close that gap. But have a look at history. Look at how China is closing the economic gap with the United States of America. In 2006, the American economy was 5 times bigger than China. Many experts believe China will close that gap before 2030. That's a total time span of about 25 years. Now look at today. The Indian economy is worth over 2.7 trillion US dollars per year. That is exactly 5 times smaller than the Chinese economy. Precisely the same gap that China faced when compared to the USA in 2006. There is no reason to believe that India cannot do the same thing or even more. Reason number 5. Youth of a nation. China has managed to boost its economy thanks to the utilization of an incredible workforce of close to 800 million people. For the past 40 years, that workforce consisted of young and powerful men and women who gave their youthful energy to work in thousands upon thousands of Chinese factories, offices and shops. Their youth was one of the main reasons for China's success. Their youth made it possible for China to become the world's workshop for making cell phones, computers and cars. China wouldn't have been able to pull off their economic miracle had their population be older. And now everything has started to become different. The Chinese workforce is aging slowly but surely. And now, after 40 years of abundant economic growth, only 29% of the Chinese people is under 25 years old. Looking at the Chinese birth rate, that number is going to drop much further, leaving China with an aging population that becomes less qualified to continue working. India, however, has a much younger population than China. No less than 52% of the Indian population is under 25 years old. 65% of the Indian population is under 35. Looking at the Indian birth rate, these numbers will increase even further in the next decade, meaning that in about 20 years' time, India will have grown to a workforce of well over 1 billion young people, bigger than the Chinese workforce has ever been, and almost twice as big as the Chinese workforce will be in 20 years' time, the Indian workforce will be much bigger, much younger, and much cheaper than the Chinese workforce. So I guess you know what the next workshop of the world will be. That is going to be India. For the next decades, more and more multinationals will move their production facilities to India instead of China. India will combine this with one of the most competing software, entertainment and tourism industries in the world, powered by a highly educated workforce, providing India with a sustaining economic growth that will outdo China year after year, making India the next big thing in the global economy. Those were my 5 reasons why the economy of India is capable of becoming larger than the Chinese.
No, we got more of this documentary to do. Great reasons why. I thought this guy articulated these reasons specifically why, but just don't think China. I think these are the top 5 reasons why your economy will be the biggest in the world. I'm going to tell you my view on all this. And again, this is coming from the lens of Scripture, the lens of Bible prophecy. I know a lot of my Indian friends, my Hindu friends will quote your scriptures, the Hindu scriptures, and help me understand more about the things that I'm seeing. Like when I read and look at and watch the Mahabharata. America's future is a dystopian future. We are leading towards civil war. We are moving towards something, some cataclysmic event, some great divide that will remove us from the world power stage. When you look at Bible prophecy, America is not in it. What happened to her? I don't know. Does a nuke go off and take out Washington, D.C. and cripple us? Is it just the Republicans and Democrats can't do anything, so we're frozen in gridlock? We are paralyzed by analysis? Is it that we were unable to control our borders and the Assyrian technique was done to us and America is bred out of existence and we are now just a giant refugee camp made up of people who do not share a common value, a common system? India, on the other hand, your future is utopian. It is coming. All the harshness that you suffered under the crown, all the ridicule that you've taken from the world, that's all about to be paid back. And I think when you look at things, there are icons of revolution, there are icons of greatness that happen. And we talked about it early in the documentary about your global influence. Karl Marx said, if you give me the poets and the musicians, I'll take a generation. You are doing that on a scale that is global. Think about this. There are foreigners who are watching your movies, listening to your music. I don't think that was the case that much 20 years ago, right? Think about the India that's coming versus the India of your grandparents. Think about that. Things are changing. Think about how India was when Big B was born. Think about it now. Think about this iconic figure, and I know some of my friends don't care for him, some love him, but Modi, you have a common man who's risen up to become prime minister. The Bible says evil goes into hiding when a slave is promoted up to ruler. There are some things happening. There are truly some things happening. And I want you to understand that. I want you to understand that and get a good grasp for it and understand that your time is coming. Listen, my Indian brothers, my Indian sisters, listen to me. You're young, you're bright, you're a beautiful people. Learn a trade, get an education, learn something, because as opportunity comes, You need to be prepared, right? If schooling is not your thing, then learn carpentry, learn draftsmanship, learn, graphic design, learn something. Have a skill ready to go and perfect your skill. Work hard at your skill and be ready, because the world is going to be your oyster. And I want to see all of my friends ready to go. I want to see you guys ready to succeed, to step in and take it and ride it, right? And I also want to say one of the things that's very, very important. I don't mean any disrespect to my Indian sisters, but if your lot is to be a mom and to be a wife, don't lose heart in that. Do it with all the love that you have. Do it with all the jahindedness you have, because behind every great man is a woman who made him that way. And the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Moms have an influence like you would not believe. So hold on to that. Hold on tight to that. And be ready. Be ready. Open your mind. Think about this. Think about what's coming. We haven't even talked about the wise men of India. Right? We still got that to talk about, man.